It's not every day that I get interviewed by a former Wall Street Journal journalist who's also appeared on BBC. Today, I'm in a guest seat, opening up about the pivots I've made and the mistakes I've learned from along the way. It's truly an honor to share this conversation with you. Jenny, take it away. Welcome to the Soft Power Project, a podcast that journals the story of women as they navigate their own transformations. I'm Sherry, a certified coach and your host. In my mid-30s, I made the bold decision to reinvent my life. Now in my 40s, I'm sharing that journey along with the stories of women who inspire me. Like you, we're embracing growth to become our highest selves. Let's celebrate the power of self-exploration, one story at a time.
Welcome back to Soft Power Project, a podcast that journals the story of women as they navigate their own transformations. But today, we're doing things a little differently. Normally, your host, Sherry Fan, is the one steering the conversation, asking the tough questions, and making the guests squirm and spill. But today, the mic has officially been flipped. That's right, I'm Jenny Sue, and I'm hijacking this episode to put Sherry in the hot seat. After so many episodes of unearthing cool stories and insights from her guests, it's time we finally get to know the person behind the mic. How did she start the podcast? What's her view on soft power? And most importantly, what has she been too humble or even too embarrassed to share? So sit back, relax, and enjoy this rare moment where Sherry has no choice but to spill it all. Let's dive in. Hey, Sherry, are you ready to dive in?
Oh, I'm so ready.
To start off, how does it feel to be interviewed?
This is probably the first real interview that I have. I mean, the previous one I had, but it's very specifically about my career.
Right.
But this is going to be quite personal. And you just say squirm and spill, right?
Yes.
So I'm a little not scared, but I'm excited.
Ooh, well, if you're not scared, I'm not doing my job. So this is the first time that the mic has been flipped. And I want the listener to know who you are. If you had to do an elevator pitch to the question, who is Sherry Fan? What would it be?
Sherry is someone who loves to have authentic conversation and journals women's story. I think that's probably suited me the most at this point in my life.
And what particularly about women's story that attracts you enough to do a whole podcast on?
I think it has to do with the fact that I feel, first of all, there are so many amazing women around me. And I realized that a lot of them, they don't think they have enough to share. They don't think they have the wisdom to share. But at the same time, I have friends who are running 4 companies at the same time. And they still feel like, I don't have a lot to share. What I'm doing is nothing special. So again, like I really wanted to empower women to share and talk more. And because they have so much wisdom. And also part of it is because I think women, especially from the age of 35, maybe 30, 35, all the way to, I think, 55, 60, or even 70, it is a really important point in our time where we are going through a lot of things. We're going through a lot of things, maybe career-wise, family-wise, health-wise, a lot of changes within us. And I really believe that there's so much we can share to each other during this journey and just talk about what we go through day by day and how do we keep ourselves mentally healthy and emotionally healthy so that we don't feel alone. Because I think the worst part is a lot of times we go through stuff thinking that we're so alone in this.
That's right. I totally agree with you. I think the goal in life is to be a unique individual, but not doing it alone. We could still be in a community. We could still be in a group. We could still be in a band together without feeling alone.
Mhm.
Yeah, agree. There's a particular number I know that holds significance to you,
Mhm.
and it's the number 35.
Mm.
Why is that number so special to
Mm.
you?
Yeah, it is because that's the point in my life where I realized that enough is enough. Like, I really had to get to know who the heck I am. It's the time where I started my consultancy. It's also the time I got my divorce. And it's the time I became a single mom. And it's the time I started to understand that being a people pleaser, it's not my full-time job anymore. So it's time to start changing. It's not an easy road. It's not instantaneous. I think I'm still learning. But yeah, that's why that number holds a very special place in my heart.
And when you had to make those pivots, when you had these epiphanies that enough is enough, I'm not a people pleaser anymore. I need to take care of myself. What was the voice that went through your head, and what did you hear in your head when you made those choices?
Mm. So I'm going to share something quite personal. I was in a marriage for about 6 to 7 years. And a large part of it, especially I think the last half of it, or more than that, I basically go to sleep crying every night. And it wasn't because I was physically abused. I was not. But I was so unhappy. And I couldn't figure it out why I was so unhappy. I thought I have everything I wanted because when I was little, listening to my mom, I had to get married by 28 because then it will be too late for women. I had to have a baby by 29 because 30 was, old mom, geriatric mom,
Yes.
according to, my mom's generation. So I think at the time I followed that path. But after I have my kid, I was in a marriage, I wasn't working. I was a stay-at-home mom. I'm like, I think I'm supposed to be happy right now, but I'm not. And I feel so alone. I feel so sad, but I don't know why. And I feel so guilty to feel so sad because I'm supposed to be happy.
Right. Because on paper, everything looked hunky dory.
Yeah. And that was the life that I wanted at the time. And it wasn't working, but I had no idea. And I was just, every night I go to sleep, I was just praying something will change. Something will change. I have no idea what the change is because to me, the actual change is too scary to think about. But I was just praying something to change. Yeah.
And then tell me about when that voice got too loud that you couldn't ignore. What was it like?
And I think that's the prayer being answered is when I don't know why it was just one day because during that year, my grandmother, who I absolutely loved, and she was like a second mom to me. She was 96 then, and she was definitely near the end and kind of facing her death. And she spent a lot of her time. So she came from China during the war, and my grandpa died when I was born. So, 42 years ago now. So she spent a lot of time alone, being this ultimate independent woman who she has 4 kids and she has, she knows how to manage her money. She invests everything well. She dressed well. She has a lot of pride. She also lives by herself. And I'm seeing her in bed and about to cross the bridge. And I think that really hits me because I just had to think, well, then what is life about?
Sure.
What can I do now to actually make the change? Because I asked for the change, but what is the change? And I knew the change. It was I had to end that marriage.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what has it been like 7 years after that decision?
So again, it's been a wild ride. There were amazing moments, there were proud moments. There were many, 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 many tough moments, lots of tears. I think immediately I entered into a really bad relationship. I was on a shaky ground. I didn't know who I was again. Like I knew I had to find out, but I still didn't know who I was. And that's the worst time to enter into a relationship. But sometimes you do because you wanted something, right, to anchor you. And to handle that, there are many tough times. Like I remember how do you call that? Because my family is a traditional Buddhism or Taoism. So we have a little shrine in the house that my mom will pray to every day. And I literally hid underneath that table one day because there's no one else in the house. But I was thankful for that because I lived with my parents at the time. So I was thankful for the alone time, but then the emotion hits hard. And I think my daughter was with my mom at the time. So I just spent hours like crying under the table. And that hit me really hard. Yeah.
Were you able to kind of see like almost like an out of body experience, witnessing yourself hunched over under a table bawling?
I did. I think that's why I still remember that vividly because it was so raw. And
what was the overwhelming emotion when you saw yourself bawling in a fetal position under a tiny table?
Yeah. I think what I saw was this little girl.
Yes.
So what I saw was this 4-year-old girl, and she didn't know what she was doing. And it's almost like I was back into the 4-year-old body because I was starting to figure it out who I was.
Yes.
But at the time, I think a lot of my tears, it was resulted from that guilt because it was a guilt that I thought I disappointed my younger self.
Got it. Got it. I think what you said really hit home for me, and I'm sure for many, many people, is that at the end of the day, our sadness, our disappointment, our heartbreaks, a lot of it is we didn't take care of the younger self within our heart. Is that we zip on by through life because we're chasing after what society wants us to be, we're chasing after the definition of success. We're chasing after a definition of happiness, that we forget that our own childhood, the child inside us is still crying out for help. And that sometimes all they need is for you to sit down and take her to ice cream and just be like, I'm okay. I'll take care of you. And have you encountered that little girl again? What's your inner child telling you now? And what's your relationship is like with the young Sherry inside you now?
So I went from being very apologetic to that little girl because I felt like I disappointed her because I felt like she wanted a marriage at 27. She wanted a child. She wanted to be a mom. She wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I thought that's what she wanted.
Yes.
And during the 7 years, I did a lot of things to help myself. And I finally went to therapy about almost 3 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago. And now I see myself holding my younger self hands and we're doing this together.
Yes.
And I'm not sorry to that image of a younger self because I knew that's not what she wanted. It was something that I thought my parents wanted, something that I thought the society wanted me to have. But yeah, that's definitely, I figured out that that's not it. But now I get to really be with my younger self
That's beautiful and very powerful to have the younger self be your own reminder of let's take a pause, let's take a beat, let's reassess. That's just beautiful. And you mentioned about when you're 35, a lot of it seems like life threw you a whole bunch of lemons all at once. And you and I talked about pivots. I think there are two kinds of pivots in life. The kind that you make consciously, that you assess the situation, you decide that I have to make a change.
Right.
I'm going to deliberately make a sharp turn to the left. And then there's a kind of pivot, kind of life forces you to pivot. Tell me about the conscious, deliberate pivot that you made to walk away from that marriage. Where did you get that courage? How did you persuade yourself to take that leap?
I think at the time, there were the combination of being forced to take that leap and also knowing that I have to take the leap. So I remember I went to a different therapist at a time, but it was for a very short period of time. I remember he said to me something. He said, sometimes chaos is good. And a large part of my life at the time, I was keeping everything peaceful. I kept everyone in my life at peace, making sure everyone's okay, maintaining the status quo for everyone. And he really encouraged me to throw off the pattern, just triggered a little bit, just poke something. And that's something that I really needed at the time. Because once you triggered it, you have to make the changes afterwards. But it's that very moment that, again, that moment I have to be motivated to do that. So that moment, I think one time he encouraged me, just ask your ex to take a walk. Just do something a little bit different. Go out for dinner or ask him a question. And I remember I asked him a question, are you happy? And he was so thrown off by that question because I never asked him that question because we hardly ever argue because we're at the point where we couldn't have a discussion. So, but to him, we're happy. But to me, that's agony. That's not happiness. So I asked him that question and I started to be a little bit more bold. And I do something a little bit different, which is I said, can we go to couples counseling? And step by step, I build up the courage.
Wow.
To end. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love what you mentioned that the marriage was to the point that you were cordial with each other, but there was not a whole lot of real interactions and conversations. And I think for any relationship, when indifference is the dominating force, that is a huge red flag that that relationship might have expired or is about to expire. I remember when I was in college and for one of my psychology classes, the professor said, there are many different types of couple. There's a couple that's constantly loving and always very sweet to each other and they hold hands and they go on vacations together. And there's one that there's a type that's fighting, that's always trying to get the words across and trying to get the other person to understand them. And then he says statistically, it's the second couple that stays married longer is because they are so interested in making sure that you understand each other, that they're so intent on trying to get like, I want you to understand me and I want to understand you, because if not, there'll be no conversation.
Yeah.
Like the absence of fight is not a silence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that kind of goes back to our conversation before when I interview you, it's the authenticity part.
Yeah.
Because when you're authentic to yourself in your own need,
Yeah.
you are fighting for that.
That's
You're
right.
asking for it. And then sometimes that leads to fight. So it's not the fighting is not the problem, right?
Yeah.
Again, you see couples like, and I was one of that. I kept it very peaceful. It looked totally fine from outside. So I surprised a hell out of people. I surprised my parents. I surprised all of my friends because I didn't tell a soul because I was too busy and tired of keeping everyone on track. I was the ultimate, I don't know, project manager for people's relationship. No one knew because I was always very quiet and always kind of like agreeable to everyone. But inside I was dying.
You mentioned that your decision to walk away from the marriage really shocked a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then what? What happened after the shock? What did you do to manage the shock? Did you care that they were shocked?
Yeah. Initially, I cared. I mean, I was born, I think, a very large part of my life, I was a people pleaser.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think I cared a lot and I felt bad and I felt guilty. Obviously, I felt guilty about now my daughter is gonna from a broken home and all of that things. So but then after a while, and again, really learning how to coming home to myself, you realize that it doesn't matter what they think. But it is shocking. Again, like I'd spend a lot of time to tell my parents and try to explain to them what happened because everyone will ask me, what happened?
Yeah.
But the thing is, nothing singular happened. It's a compounded effect.
That's right.
Many, many small things, many disagreement, many misaligned of values. And we're coming from completely different background. And obviously I didn't know him enough. We were dating a few months, mistake. But then it was so hard for me to own up to that mistake and say, I can't do this anymore. But at the time I had to. So me owning up and said, I didn't know who I was. I couldn't do this. And it was really ultimately, it's not, I never really wanted to blame him for the marriage. It's because I didn't know who I was. I picked the wrong person. And then he probably picked me for some purposes. And at the end of the day, a lot of relationships were transactional. So really, it was shocking for a lot of them, but I had to own up to it was me. I didn't know who I was.
That takes so much courage to be able to see situation clearly and properly put the blame on your own and say, okay, I have to own it. It's my mistake. I'll eat it. And then what? How did you come to the point where you be like, I made the mistake and I'm okay with it? How did you come to the point where you're able to forgive yourself?
I think that took a long time. It really took a long time. And it wasn't until I think last year or year before, I started to really come home to myself. And it wasn't until I can look back and see what I have accomplished throughout these 7 years and how much I've grown.
Tell me about the accomplishments. In what ways?
I think there are many small wins. And I'm right now, I'm really trying to be intentional about these small moments. And when I talk about accomplishment, I'm not talking about me earning a shit ton of money or whatever. But yeah, at the time when I got divorced, I didn't have much of a saving because I didn't know I needed a career. It sounds so weird to me now. I didn't know. I didn't know that I couldn't depend on someone. I had to be responsible for myself. And that's a hard lesson. So the small win almost kind of me knowing that I had to be responsible for myself. I have to hold myself accountable for my own happiness. To me, that's a win, just to know that.
And I think that, I mean, your podcast is all about soft power. That's it. That's to have the awareness of what you could do better and then do it. And you did it. And so when I asked about what your accomplishment, were, the money is just the outcome of having that awareness and the boldness to take action. To me, that's soft power. You're embodying what your podcast is about.
I mean, I think that would be, I mean, that's such an amazing compliment. Thank you so much.
Well, it's true. And what you've just described, and I think in our previous conversation, one of the common topic that we always come back to is traumas in life. Now, trauma doesn't have to be like you broke your bones in 20 places. It doesn't have to be multiple deaths in your family. I think trauma comes when your heart is a little bruised.
Yeah.
What's traumatic for you doesn't have to be traumatic for others. So tell me, what's your thoughts on trauma and how can we coexist with trauma? Because it's something that's inevitable.
I think first and foremost, the hardest part is actually to be aware that I had traumas, and also understanding. Okay, so I think for a lot of people, trauma came from their childhood, right? Your childhood shaped who you are, and obviously, I know that my parents did their best. They also had a lot of trauma growing up. My grandparents had a lot of trauma. So again, this is generational trauma. So, but knowing that there is trauma and detaching yourself from that, I think that's a second thing, because you're not your trauma. Sometimes you let your trauma consume you. And that's really when people get into the victim mentality, is that I get hurt all the time. People hurt me all the time. And, you do hear people like, oh my God, women are this or men are this. It's because you see yourself as a victim of your trauma. But the thing is, I'm not my trauma. And it took a while to really detach myself, to see myself, okay, I had these traumas and I can see the results of that. But how do I make things better, or how do I make myself happier?
For sure. I love what you talked about the victimhood, or the idea of being a victim. Eckhart Tolle, one of the great spiritualists of our time, he talked about how sometimes people enjoy being the victim because you're alleviating the responsibility to take yourself out of that situation. If you're constantly taking a passive role, then you are saying no to responsibility. You're putting yourself in a comfortable position because it's done to me, because other people is doing, that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm that. So being able to jump out and say, I'm not my trauma, I'm not a victim, takes a lot of practice and courage and a mental shift to bounce out of that, because it can be a comfortable place.
Absolutely. It can be a comfortable place. And I think that's why, I mean, at the time, what's funny is that certain friends, only not friends now, but friends back then, they would enjoy that kind of story from you, right? I had friends who were not in contact with me for years. And then they found out I was divorced, and they immediately jump in and go, are you okay? They want the story. Or they meet up and they're just like, yeah, he's an asshole, right? I'm just like, he's who he is. I mean, I don't need to tell you sad story. I don't need to complain about someone. So I think from a very young age, I just don't like that victim mentality, because I've seen a lot of women in my life that had that because they were put in a place where maybe they couldn't have something else. It was harder for them. But I can, I study abroad. I had this education. I had, I've seen the world. I can get myself out of it. I just don't feel like that's the way to live. Yeah. It's comfortable. but it's also suffocating.
It's suffocating, sometimes addictive, because when you don't have to take responsibility of your own emotion, it's a way of escaping from pain. And so it does take so much to detach yourself to say, I'm not my trauma. In fact, I can pull myself out of the trauma. I can pull myself out of the trough. That is not to minimize the pain that maybe some of the listeners are going through right now. Pain is pain is pain is pain. It's hard. But the reminder is at the end of the tunnel, you do have that power. It might take you a little bit to get there, but the power is not diminished in you.
Yeah.
You know, pain is pain is pain, but you can't override the pain.
Absolutely. And I think knowing that you have a choice in everything, you have a freedom to choose. You can choose to stay or you choose to go. What do you want? Right. And I think, again, like women in our past generation, a lot of them were not given that opportunity to have that choice, but we can now.
For sure.
And also I think one of the driving force for me to move forward is my daughter. And we had that conversation before, prior to the podcast. We know that if the women are good, if the mom is good, if the women in general, if we're good, the society is good.
Exactly. I was sharing with Sherry in our previous conversation that the short months I lived in Africa, my professor at that time talked about when you educate a mom, you educate the family. And I think that is so powerful. When the mom is good, the chance of the family being okay is much greater.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to revisit the word trauma. So there are traumas that happens to us. You get hit by a car when you're just walking, or all of a sudden your company goes under, so you lose your job. So that's trauma that happens to us. I want to talk and dive a little bit more into the self-inflicted traumas. And I think that has a lot to do with mentality. That's a lot to do with the story you tell yourself.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little about your thoughts on self-inflicted traumas?
And I think that for me, when it comes to self-inflicted trauma, that happens when you feel like you don't have a choice, or you don't, again, like that victim mentality, right? The self-inflicted trauma is when let's say, I already know this is bad for me, or this person is bad for me, but I feel like I don't have a choice. I had to be in this relationship, or have to be in this business partnership, whatever. And then you get hurt again, and you resent yourself and you resent the others. And then you're like, no, that's it. And then I go back again. To me, that's the self-inflicted trauma.
Very much so. Very much so. When you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
I think another type of self-inflicted trauma is you don't let yourself fail. You hold yourself in such to a standard of perfection that if I fail, it's because I'm stupid. It's because I'm lame. I'm too fast. That's why he doesn't love me anymore. I'm too dumb. That's why I didn't get the job. I'm too incompetent. That's why I got made redundant and other people didn't. And when you are being so mean to yourself, there could be many reasons why that person decided not to date you. And it has nothing to do with your weight, or the company had to go under because maybe there was embezzlement that you don't know anything about. But yet, if you keep making yourself the center of the trauma, you're making yourself the center of the chaos. That's tough. That's really
absolutely,
tough.
Absolutely.
And what is your way of being able to recognize and discern when something is a externally forced trauma, or something it's like all in my head?
I think that is still quite difficult for me. Sometimes they're happening at the same time, I think. Because again, like when something external happened to you, you triggered your response. And this is something that I'm trying to do right now. I mean, I'm still kind of in the process, is to understand what my old pattern is, how I deal with toxic behavior, how do I deal with toxic workplace, or how do I deal with triggers, right? Understanding my old pattern, and then also adopting a new one. But you're constantly in this in between or back and forth. So when something external happened to you, that ultimately would trigger you. And then do you want it to go back to the old thinking, or do you want it to adopt a new thinking and move forward? And sometimes it's okay that I fall into the old thinking, but just give yourself grace, because I think it's hard. But then knowing when you detach from that, again, the trauma's not you, the trigger's not you, the emotion's not you. You're knowing when to detach from that. And then that's really when you're free. Then you can make a choice.
That's right. One of my favorite quotes, and of course I probably won't be able to say it verbatimly, it's by a Holocaust survivor named Viktor Frankl. And he talks about how in between stimulus and response is a space where freedom lies. And that freedom allows you to decide how you want to respond to the stimulus. And just kind of like you said, take a beat, think back, have that inner conversation, have that dialogue, and assess, is this something that I want to continue? Is this something that it's worth my while to move forward to? But we all have that freedom between a stimulus and a response. And that's the space that we need to hold sacred. And when we give away that space, we give away the power.
Yeah, and then nowadays people use social media. They scroll through things, they look at TikTok and videos, whatever, or they, a lot of people go out, let's get drunk, we're shopping for that matter, to numb that period, right? To numb it, because that is uncomfortable as hell. It is the most uncomfortable period of time. Because there's so much emotion flooding in, you might hate yourself.
You have to make choices.
Again, but it's that period of time that you really get to grow. You really get to pick yourself up from that situation and move forward. And I think that's the hardest thing right now, because you actually have a lot of things that distract you. And, again, like sometimes we seek those distractions because we don't want to feel
for sure
in that space.
You want to escape from what's happening. You mentioned about social media. It's a very hot topic, because I think social media is a double-edged sword. It could be a place where you can make authentic connections, especially with people who live far away, you have common interests. But it could also be a source of agonizing comparison. You see people posting amazing photos of vacation in Cabos with their gorgeous boyfriends, or posting videos of their well-accomplished children getting to Ivy League school.
Right.
And then you look at yourself going, why am I falling short? And that you compound that insecurity. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on how we should deal with this double-edged sword called social media.
I don't know if I wouldn't say I have good advice. I would just say, honestly, I'm so glad I didn't grow up having social media. That's all I can say. Because again, like my daughter is 11. And no, she doesn't have IG. She has none of those accounts. But she does have Line. And she found a way. Even in Line, there is a place you can post things, when you can like things. I don't use that. And I found out that she was using that because her friend were using that. It's so addictive to have that. And I had to sit back and just be like, oh my God, like if I were 11 and I was handed that kind of quote unquote drug in a way, how would I handle it? How do you not have that, or not want that?
Tell me about, you used the word addictive. Tell me about why you think that kind of interaction could be so addictive.
I think it's that validation. right? I mean, I know why it can be very addictive. I think that's why I don't use social media that much, because I know, like, I am someone who seek validation, and it's so fun to see all the likes number go up, your follower numbers go up. It's fun. And I don't think anyone can say no, it's not.
Yes.
It's fun.
Yes.
But is that going to affect my decision-making process? No. So that's something at least at this age, I can learn that, okay, I want the followers account, but I want the right one and the right followers. And also, driving follower account doesn't mean I wanted to change my decision in content creation. I still want to create what I wanted, even if the follower account falls short, or 500 or 1,000. I'm fine with that, or even 50. But again, it's that making that decision, and you're still going back and forth.
For sure. And I love you talked about that, yourself well enough that for you and for me, getting that validation could be very fun, and you want to chase that high.
Oh, yeah.
And because we both know that we are the type that likes to chase high, we avoid it.
Yeah.
We're like, okay,
Yeah.
red flag, let me step away from it because I know I'm going to fall into it. That's why I don't drink, because I feel like if I start drinking, I might be a drunk, because I do have that addictive personality. You're right. And then you have that awareness of what you want to do. This is how you want your content creation to be. I think it goes back to our original topic, is authenticity.
Yeah.
Is I'm going to present myself who I am to the world.
Yeah.
And in a way, take it or leave it. But here's what I have to offer. So we talked about your first 35 years and what happened. If we could break life into different acts, that's your act one. That's your first 35 years. All right. Let's talk about what's your act two like? What's your second set of 35? What do you look forward to?
I'm looking forward to more peaceful life, more at ease. So there are two things, I think. Yes, the material world, there are some goals there, right? There are some goals. I wanted to own a company. I wanted to be a good leader. That's still my goal, the goal of mine. And actually, a goal I want to share with you is that from Soft Power Project, I'm hoping to have my own conference every year.
Amazing.
And that's going to be a conference where women go and no social media posting.
Ooh.
So it's going to be speakers invited, but it's a real conversation. It's
Amazing.
authentic conversation. So that's my goal. But when it comes to the inner goal, what I wanted for me, I think it's just peace and ease and freedom. I think it's feeling free. And I never had that before when I was a child, because again, I was always chasing that validation from parents. I'm looking at my parents for the subtle change in their facial expression response, and like, did I hear higher pitch from my mom?
Right. Sometimes when they don't say anything, that's when they say the loudest.
Exactly. Why is it so quiet? Yes. Right? It's that, like, I was constantly looking for the response I needed to provide in order to get that validation. I don't think I ever really enjoyed my childhood. I never played. So I think for the next act, I want to play and just have fun and be free.
I love that. Yes, let's play. And how does your childhood, your experience affect the way you mother your daughter now?
Oh, wow. Yeah. And I think a lot of my changes was because of that, my relationship with my daughter and how I want to build that. Because again, like, child come into your life, whether you like it or not, they're triggering you. My daughter is forcing me to face something I didn't face before. So because I want to have a relationship with her where she can authentically express herself to me. And that means I need to be authentic to her. And that has nothing to do with what I hope she will become, what I hope she will wear, what I hope she will say. But again, like, because I was raised differently. So you had that generation trauma that is pulling you. And I had to cut that and making sure I'm educating her the way I want it so that she can be free and she can be happy. And for my daughter and I, we're kind of like grew up together. I feel like I literally was reborn when she was born. In a way that when she was born, I was like, I had no idea what I'm doing. I don't know who I was. I had to relearn how to be a person, how to be patient, how to be just like your mom in our other conversation, in a difficult situation, but how do you talk to someone still in a way that will be helpful for them? You're not piling on your emotion, your trauma onto someone. And that's, man, I think that's hard. And I'm still learning.
It's very hard. In psychology, we call that a transitional character, is how it takes that one person to break that tradition of trauma, sadness, expectation, comparison, what have you, and be able to say, I'm not going to continue that. In fact, I'm going to start new traditions. I'm going to start new ways. I'm going to start new habits. And usually that transitional character has to be very conscious of what they're doing and be very deliberate and be very brave.
Not always the most popular person. Nope.
No, because you're seeing as the rebel. Yes. You're stirring up changes.
Yeah.
When you're talking about, having that authentic conversation with your daughter, I just remember when I was a teenager, it was one of the many, 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 many fights that my mom and I had. And I remember my mom at the end was like, Jenny Sue, you were not born with a manual. I don't know how to be your mother. Nobody taught me how to be your mother. Oh. And sometimes I think back to that when I'm having a tough time with other people. Like, man, I wish people just came with a manual and I could read and they go, but that's not happening. And so having that conversation and then finding out, asking follow-up questions is really, really important.
Oh, yeah. And knowing when to say sorry.
Oh,
I think as a mom, that was hard. But as soon as you can do that, and I don't think it's just as a mom, as a person, knowing when to say sorry. Hey, I should not have said that. I'm sorry. I know that may have hurt you. I'm just really sorry. Own up to it.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that was eye-opening for me. And that was different.
Yeah.
So I'm creating a different tradition. Yeah.
So that's one tradition, is that parents can be wrong. If mom does something that offends you, mom will apologize. What are some other traditions that you want to start with your daughter and that you hope that she will continue when she becomes mom?
Yeah. I want to share with you something that's quite personal. I was born in January 2nd. It's my birthday. I have a little bit of complex with my birthday. Okay. My parents are not big on birthday at all. But for some reason, I want to be celebrated.
Sure.
Again,
course.
Everyone's like, obviously.
Yeah.
But my parents are just not that kind of people. Okay. And I don't love it, but I learned to understand, again, like I can't change them.
Yeah.
But I can find the people that want to celebrate me. And that's something. And then this year happened. And then I, as a good daughter, I bought my own cake.
Yay!
I brought it home because I knew my dad wanted to have cake. And then, but my mom was walking and she was like hanging out. And then she said something. She said, "Oh, I forgot it's your birthday." And I was upset. I was sad. I was really sad. And my dad kind of started talking about something else that has nothing to do with my birthday while I'm unpacking my own birthday. And then that experience itself, and my daughter was there. My daughter knew I was not happy. Sure. It wasn't the moment that you're expecting to have, right, on your birthday. So I told my daughter that day, I said, when you grow up, when you want, let's say you are in US or Europe traveling somewhere, and it's mommy's birthday, you come back when you want to, not when you have to. only when you want to do something. I don't want you to have to feel the obligation to do something. So that's the new thing that I hope to build with my daughter is that you love someone, you do something because you love someone, not because you have to.
That's right.
And I think a lot of time in my family or in a lot of traditional, very Asian, Chinese family, maybe they feel like they're obligated. And I just feel like that's not necessary.
That's not necessary at all. Yeah, it again goes back to the word authenticity. It goes back to doing what your heart really wants to do, and sometimes your heart just doesn't want to have that dinner with your mom and dad. So that's a great tradition to start, to tell your daughter, do what speaks to you and not what you're being told to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And tell me about a conversation that you have with your daughter. What kind of questions do you usually ask? Do you have like a set of questions that you ask her to find out about her day and how she's feeling?
Great question. That evolved all the time now that she's entered into her teenage years. So now she like invented acronyms. It's like, instead of saying I don't know, she's like IDK.
Oh, okay. Got
That,
it.
that kind of thing. So it's harder to carry on a longer conversation, but I think it's more about, because I know her humor, I know her, she's a bit sassy, and I know that. But I what I try to do is just to say, hey, is there anything that you try that was new today? How was it? Did you enjoy it? Were you scared? I think it was just by having that genuine question. I said, it's okay that you're scared. It's okay that you feel these things, but we can talk about it. And I think that's how the conversation goes.
I so appreciate that so much. I'm not married and I don't have any kids, but I am an auntie. And one of my nephews is a teenager who, in fact, he just turned 18. And I just remember the day that he turned from this chatterbox to the caveman. And I mean, like, he would give me the grunt. How was your day? Are you hungry? Like, I don't know what the grunt means. And so for a while, I ended up not wanting to ask him questions because I don't want to receive the grunts anymore. But I think even when we're getting grunts, they want to be asked. Our care, our attention is manifested in how many follow-up questions, how curious we are to them. And maybe this caveman stage will last for a while. I don't know. But I do believe that we continue to ask. Even if it's IDK, we ask.
Right, exactly. Or like offering space for them, just like, hey, I'm here. If you have any questions, just let me know. Sometimes, majority of time they don't. But again, I think it's just reassurance, right? For them to know that you can talk to me anytime.
And it goes the same to adult friends or loved ones, to give them that space, but assurance that I'll sit in the mud with you, no matter how long it takes. I'll sit in the mud with you.
Yeah.
So we talked about curiosity, and this conversation has been amazing, but I feel like it's time for me to really put you in the hot seat. I prepared 20 questions. And Sherry has no idea which 5 I'm going to ask. And she is obligated. You have no freedom but to answer these 5 questions.
I'm excited.
And these questions really is a way for me to get to know you better and for the audience to get to know you better. Okay, so you're ready for your rapid fire round?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. What song instantly puts you in a good mood?
Okay, I can't think of any song actual name because
Sing it.
I'm horrible. I'm actually really horrible with the name of the song, but any song with a really good rhythm, it's me. Any song that makes me want to dance. It may have really dirty lyrics.
Because you don't listen to the lyrics.
I don't listen to lyrics. I don't know why. Maybe there's something wired differently in my brain. I don't
Yeah.
listen to lyrics. I don't remember the name of the song,
Yeah.
but I just love the rhythm and the beat.
Got it. Got it. So something that makes you want to boogie.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right, second question. What's your go-to comfort food?
Oh, my go-to comfort food. I think I have two. When I was a child, I've always had beef noodle soup. Whenever I come home to Taiwan from abroad, because I study abroad for a very long time.
Yeah.
And now my go-to comfort food, if I can, I make myself a sandwich.
A sandwich? What kind of sandwich?
I like smoked salmon with apple slices and brie cheese.
Whoa. And you call me bougie? Come on.
That was something that I did when I was living by myself in the States.
Amazing. All right, I'm going to try it. All right. What is always in your bag? What's that one thing you always carry in your bag?
I have so many things in my bag. What is it in my bag? That's interesting. I mean, like phone,
For sure.
Umbrella, all that. Oh, what's in my bag?
But what's that one thing uniquely Sherry that you always have in your bag?
I have a makeup pouch that I carry my daughter's notes. When she wrote it when she was very little, she just learned how to write things and she drew a little heart. I carry that with me.
Can you share what the note says?
No, I think it's just like I love you and a little heart. And it was like a very crooked writing and she was just learning how to write.
Oh, that's very cute.
Yeah.
My answer to that question is poop bag because I walk my dog. So I always have a poopy bag in my bag just in case. What is one skill you wish you had?
Oh man, there are so many skills I wish I had. Ability to cook.
Oh, okay.
I can make sandwich, but that's it. Because I feel like that's something I wanted to do with my daughter. I want her to come home like, Mom, I wanted your home cooking. Maybe it's not be perfect, but yeah, I wanted to do that. Yeah.
And the last question is, what's your most irrational fear?
I have so many irrational fears. I forgot the word. I always forget the word. I have a fear of looking at like bee nest, like small, how do you call it? There's a phobia. There's a something phobia. I can't remember that.
Like just things are like just beehives or just things are just
not just beehive. It's like
anything
tiny holes and like things that are compact together. There's a word for that.
Yes.
I can't remember. But yeah, that's my irrational fear.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you want to be friends with Sherry, make sure you make good sandwiches.
There you go.
Do not take her to a bee farm.
No, please
and
don't.
always blast music that she could dance to. And that's the way to Sherry's heart. Is
Absolutely.
that a good summary?
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. My gosh, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. I learned a lot. I think the takeaway really is, hey, let's be kinder to ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's be authentic.
I know. Be kind to yourself. Give yourself grace. Give yourself that space and turn your phone off a little bit. Yeah.
Great. And no beehives, no bee farms. Thank you so much, Sherry.
Thank you.
Thank you. What a powerful conversation with Sherry. I learned so much. Big thanks to Sherry for letting me play podcast host for once. I had a great time. If I could sum up an interview, it would be, if you're standing at a crossroads or you've taken the turn, I hope our conversation today has reminded you that you're not alone. Crossroads, chaos, triggers are essential turning points of our lives. Every pivot, every detour, every unraveling is also an invitation to grow, to listen deeper, and to come home to yourself. The truth is, life doesn't move in straight lines. It moves in spirals, in waves, in still small voices, and in big blowhorns. And sometimes the unwanted change is exactly what you need at that moment to grow and expand. Thanks for listening.
The Soft Power Project is produced and hosted by Sherry Fang. For any inquiry, please email us at softpower.u@gmail.com.